Okay, so you have watched, or at least I hope you have watched, my top 10 albums of 2017. These are the albums that didn't quite make the cut, but I still feel like they need to be talked about. They are 31 albums that I feel still need to be talked about because there was a lot of great music from 2017. And so let's dive into them. Now, this is only going to be like a very surface level, maybe 1 or 2 sentences, quick comments on this. Otherwise, I mean, I'm going to be talking about 31 albums, and that's going to take up a lot of time. I mean, Andy and the boys have really kind of declined lately, and I feel like this is just another evidence towards that. There were certain aspects of this album that just really almost infuriated me, and not in like a good way. Okay, I might have gushed about this album, but really there's no real new territory that has been discovered within this. Kappa hasn't really put out a truly original album in a while, and outside of like a couple moments here and there, the album's pretty much forgettable if you've already heard their discography. Steven Wilson's barely on it, and I know in some ways that's good, but in some ways I'm like, I'm actually not the biggest fan of Pain of Salvation. This might have been one of their, you know, more cohesive concepts, but it just didn't really connect too much with me. Big Big Train released 2 albums this year, and they are both kind of underwhelming. There are very little moments on this album that I really gravitated to, and with Big Big Train being a very hit and miss band, I mean, Grimmspound was a miss. Big reputation, big reputation. Ooh, you and me, we got big reputation. Ah, and I heard about you. Ooh, 'cause you know about me. Okay, these boys really know how to play. Unfortunately, it was a lot more substance over emotion, and it just didn't really quite connect with me. It felt like a lot of, and I know it was, just a lot of really talented, really skillful, and very experienced players coming together and just jamming away. Like, there was a lot of really great meaty moments on it, but it's just not my cup of tea. Motorcycle is another one of those bands that is very hit and miss, and that is very apparent on a lot of their albums. Now, The Tower is a lot more of a unified track, but there wasn't that moment that I was waiting for, you know? And I know that I talked about this at length in my review for it, but on each of their albums, they still had that moment, that mwah moment. And The Tower just didn't quite have that for me. This might end up being their worst album. I don't want to say I was disappointed with this. I applaud their attempt at trying something a little bit different. It's a lot more harmonization. It's a lot more subdued. There's not quite as many of those blow down the doors moment that we heard from like The Congregation or Cole or the Tall Poppy Syndrome, but I don't know. I just didn't feel it. I didn't feel it. I still miss Beardfish. I know that the boy is able to just do some masterwork on the instruments, but and there were some brilliant moments on this album, but I still miss Beardfish. I love the groove of this album. It had a lot of great meaty aspects of this. It didn't really have a whole lot of like really, really meaty moments, but it had like a great time. Streets Ahead of their first album still needs a little bit of work. There's still a little bit of stop and goes. Apparently this was my #1 played album on Spotify. Not their best work, but the album has grown on me quite a bit, and I love when an album does that, where I was first a little bit disappointed, but the more I listen to it, the more I get out of it. That middle section though, no. So apparently this is like a kind of a sequel, prequel to another one of their albums. I didn't really pick up on that at first, but it definitely has that. I love Anathema. It has some beautiful moments on it. I love where this album goes. It doesn't really have a lot of that like real meaty parts that I was hoping for, but it does have that brilliant closing piece that I just let wash over me. But the rest of the album just kind of was there. I love a good soundtrack, and this one really blew me out of the water. It's a perfect blending of a dark fairy tale and Guillermo del Toro. Brilliant movie, one of my favorites of the year, and this soundtrack really rose above what I have been hoping for, and I've been listening to it quite a bit lately, and I can't help but love it. I really wanted to put this in my top 10. The work that was put into this album was brilliant. I love a lot of these really hard-hitting tracks and just like really kind of a track, but I always loved Ayreon's more progressive side of things than the more heavy side of things, and I still loved it, but I do feel like it's one of his more weaker modern albums. The amount of like music this guy is able to put out, the Deer Hunter putting out their EP of All Is As All Should Be. I have to actually like read that out, otherwise I trip over it. Great addition to the overall discography of the Deer Hunter. There are a few problems on it, even though it's only 6 tracks, but a brilliant album, one that I really enjoy, and I hope that the playing and the giving back to fans helps Casey come up with a brilliant closer piece for the Deer Hunter Axe series. Really looking forward to that. This one came out of nowhere for me. I'd never heard about this band until now, and I love that kind of playing styles. I love that darker approach like Engelard and Anecdoton, and this is another one that I can add to that 3, so I have more of like a holy trinity within that type of playing styles. But I also love how optimistic these guys are, and this had that. There were some moments that I'm like, not quite sure if it works, but overall, great piece. Hauntingly beautiful, one you need to check out. So many great moments on this album, and I feel like they really need to be talked about a little bit more. Compilation album at its best. I love that it wasn't just a straight up compilation album, and it feels like a soundtrack to the video game. As I said, I love soundtracks. This was Steven Wilson's best output this year, which is really saying something considering that it's all reused material. But I like how they rejigged a lot of these, like the title track of The Last Day of June being a different take on Routine. Really great stuff. In my mind, it's Wolflight Part 2. So if you've heard Wolflight, kind of heard this one. This guy still gets me. I love the feel. I love the different presentations on this album. I love the different like influences that we've heard on this, and it's just it all together. So, you know. What can I say? I love this album. I keep listening to it, even though it was just released a couple of weeks ago. It just really stand out for me that one song of Superhero Juggernaut just alone was enough to keep me coming back. Loved it. Loved it. Another soundtrack, I really have to start reviewing soundtracks for the amount that I just love with them. The presentation on this, the way that they were able to really modernize the original of like that Vangelis, however you want to pronounce his name, how they modernized it without just completely Hans Zimmering all over it. Like it still had that unified feel. So apparently this is their worst. It's still the only album that I've heard from them. I'm going to go back and re-listen to a lot of their other past works. I've loved this album, and if it's their worst, and Citadel I think is the one that's really pumping, I got to go back and listen to that, because, I mean, if this is the benchmark that I've gone to, and all there is to go is up, I'm really excited. The best! The best! So good! Yeah, so fun. It is so much fun. Go ahead and listen to it. I love Dungeons & Dragons, and this is just so good. Okay, so EPs are a little bit harder for me to rate, but this one is just perfect. And that's the reason why I kept it off of the top 10, because top 10 albums, and this is more of an EP, but it's still one that I need to talk about. I feel like it's Mastodon's best work to date. Each of these 4 tracks are just so brilliant and so wonderful. The intricate playing styles of the guitars and the rhythm sections and the vocalizations, all of it works together just like that. Another soundtrack, one that I actually did review. I'm actually going to see this movie again in a private screening because I loved Your Name so much. One song, A Sparkle, that 8-minute journey, every single time hits me so hard. Some of you might be wondering why this didn't make it onto the top 10, even though I was gushing so heavily about this album in my review for it. This is one of those flash in the pan albums, and I get really excited about it, but the more time I spend with it, the more I don't quite attach to it. Now, that one song, that mid song on this album is still brilliant, and I still love it, but that one song kind of burned so brightly that I overlooked a lot of the flaws on this album. Now, that's not to say that this isn't a great album, because this is the last one of all of the 30 albums that came before it, but it didn't make it onto the top 10 list, even though I originally had it on my top 10 list, because, again, it didn't have a very good lasting effect. It was very much like a juicy fruit stick of gum, where that first couple of tries, really brilliant, really great, really pumping, really happening, flash in the pan, but then once that initial flavor is digested and used up, what we have left over is not the greatest. It's still brilliant and still amazing, but it's not the greatest. So, that's the quick, fast-paced review of the albums of this year that I really remember. Again, not to say that these are the only albums that came out this year. These are the ones that I really enjoyed and I listened to quite a bit. What were some of the albums that I missed? Again, let me know of those by commenting down below. If you haven't already checked it out, check out my top 10 list. I'm going to leave it within the end card, so have some fun with those. And again, let me know which are your favorite top 10 albums of 2017. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, you guys are definitely the best. And until next time, in 2018, notes out! Hey guys, thank you so much for watching once again. I'm just doing a little bit of an end card here. It's December, which means I've got a notes review community survey going on. I've left that link down below, so go fill that out. It's a census. It's just to let me know a little bit more about yourself. I've got a couple fun links there for other videos to check out, as well as to subscribe, so definitely check those out, as well as some social media things down below. Thank you guys once again. Notes out.